The Cannes Film Festival doing the work of the CIA? It's no secret that the CIA spent decades financing the Tibet separatist movement and possibly is still doing so to keep it from dying. But why are world-renowned film festivals such as Cannes joining in the futile effort? That seems to be the case as it's set to screen two Tibet-related films peddling separatism under the guise of spirituality and ethics. In French, I would shout out "fake gaffe," which means watch out. Are these films what they claim to be? Who are the people behind these productions? How many of them, at their artistic orgy of arrogance and ignorance, actually been to Tibet or Xizang? What do those who live there today say about their lives? Who's people who can find no voice in the star-studded halls and alleyways of the French Riviera? Welcome to The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined from Lingzhi City in Tibet or Xizang Autonomous Region by a local Tibet resident, Norbu Dramdu, who is co-founder of Tibet Dreamer Education. From Beijing by Tibetan scholar So Lang Zhuoma, associate researcher at the China Tibetology Research Center. Also from Beijing by David Ferguson, Honorary Chief English Editor of Foreign Languages Press. The warmest welcome to all of you. I'm going to go to Norbu first, who is in Lingzhi and who is of the Tibet ethnic group. I'm so curious about your life. I understand you have been traveling inside Tibet and you're using mobile connection to join us on this program. Tell us a bit about your life now and what you're busy with.
And then I've been busy with the traveling with my wife because we have been driving around because there are some very nice hotels in Tibet, which I didn't go. My friends are strongly recommending those great hotels in a very nice and in a very remote areas, which my parents haven't never heard of. So those hotels are amazing, stunning. And I went there and then I'm just going to head to the next destination, which is an amazing place in a very remote area, a fantastic and a fancy hotel, which I can't believe that I wish you could visit someday.
I would love
That's
to
what I've been
go.
visiting recently.
I would love to go.
Yeah,
I was in Lingzhi about 2 years ago, and I was really impressed with the beauty of this place. The infrastructure, the roads were just amazing. Unfortunately, I was only able to spend like a day or two. But I want to show some images. Probably, Noble, you're not able to see these images, but our audience will be able to see. And these are archive images, and I'm going to warn people that they might be distressing. These are images of Old Tibet, where serfs, you're looking at serfs who are shackled and who may have already been punished, amputated, but being forced to work in fields in very harsh conditions. And these are the kind of images that people are not seeing outside of China. And Noble, what is life really like in Tibet now? Are there still slaves being shackled and forced to work in Tibet? How big is the gap between what these pictures are showing of old Tibet and today's Tibet?
and then you can believe that where I am, I'm in a coffee shop actually, because a bunch of a lot of people are enjoying a lot of new things like a coffee, and then they turned that coffee shop in the night and turned into a cooktop like a party place. And then there's a huge change, and there's a nothing like what you mentioned just now about the slaves and things. Just the people are just like following what they really like to do in their daily lives. And the evening, it's a very interesting place to be too because people have a like hang out with their friends at night and spending a lot of time together. Yeah, that's what it is now.
Well, when people talk about Tibet from outside of China, especially in the West, they seem to have a very idealized image of this place, as if life was very good, the slavery was not a problem, and now life has tremendously deteriorated. There's no freedom. It seems to be the opposite of what has been happening on the ground. Noble, what is your comment?
Okay, actually, I visited Japan in last month, And then in my mind, the Japanese people definitely they're wearing their traditional clothes everywhere, but I found they're wearing suits and ties and carrying their suitcase and going everywhere. But what I was expecting is I thought like people are wearing those kind of clothes everywhere they go, and they're singing those Japanese style of music. But actually, when I see them, they're not doing that things like that. So definitely, I can believe that like people outside of Tibet, they probably think like Tibetan people are living life like this, but actually here, a lot of things are being modernized, and a lot of things probably go beyond their imaginations. So I wish people could come to Tibet and see Tibet with their own eyes, because this is about a globalization. It's becoming like a global place. Like people are gonna very much well connected. Now I'm using the internet that connected to CGTV anytime, like a very conveniently. So a lot of things are changing here.
Okay, thank you very much, Norbo. I don't want to keep you much longer from your travels, so I wish you all the very best and have a great time. Let me get to,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for being on the show again. Let me go to David. David, you have been to Tibet, you have written about Tibet, you have read about Tibet, and actually your perception completely flipped. Tell us a bit, however, about these film festivals. It seems there's a penchant among these European film festivals, those in Switzerland in particular, about showing, the spiritual side of things. But if they care so much about human rights and, freedom, why aren't they showing at all the images of the slaves, of the serfs that I showed, that were living under the Dalai Lama rule in pre-PRC Tibet?
Good morning, Lucine. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, the question's a very pertinent one. The fact of the matter is that in the Western media now, there is no longer any diversity. 10 years ago, I come from the UK, 10 years ago, you had a broad range of opinion, and you could read objective coverage of almost any matter. But there's been a concerted effort over the last 10 years to collectivize the Western media, and now there is no diversity of opinion. There's a narrative to be presented, and you find that narrative unbroken. And that means that on an issue like Tibet, you're not going to get alternative views. There's a story to be told in Tibet. It's a story about happy peasants tending their yaks in the idyllic pastures of Tibet under the benevolent gaze of the Dalai Lama. And then China came along and ruined the whole thing. And that's the only story that you're going to get.
That sounds very sad for me. I mean, these people, we're in Switzerland, we talk about people of highly educated background, we talk about a lot of money as well, and yet it seems there's great ignorance and unwillingness to face the changing reality. Let me get some, hopefully, answer from Stephen Broer, who's chairman of the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, and he's joining us online. Now, good morning, Mr. Broer. As I mentioned, there are two films that are set to be screened in Cannes, one of the most prestigious film festivals, and they have been funded by Swiss and American money, directed by people who have never probably been to Tibet, either in the past nor today, and it's largely associated with the Tibetan exile communities being shown on such powerful platforms such as Cannes. Of course, people are going to say they have the freedom to show whatever they want, but why are they not showing the images of serfs that were living under Dalai Lama's rule when they talk about the old days, when they talk about inner peace? What about the inner peace of these serfs?
Well, I've had the opportunity to visit Xizang in May of last year as part of a delegation, which was eye-opening for me to actually experience the life of the people in Xizang, as it's called in the West Tibet. And the picture was completely different than the picture that is put forward by the mainstream media. They're playing a game that is, it's a political game that is built on a kind of romantic vision of life in Tibet under the Dalai Lama that is been undermined by autocratic Chinese communist dictators. This is just a consistent but unbending view that is presented to people in Europe and the United States especially, who have absolutely no knowledge of what the reality is. And that is the mindset that they want to present without any kind of balance or realistic picture. Unfortunately, it's an uphill battle because there are many questions, I believe, which are connected to the issue of development in Xizang as well as Xinjiang, which are not the Western world is not happy with the developments that are actually related to, in my view, the Belt and Road Initiative and forward development to eliminate poverty. And what we saw when I was in Xizang was massive amounts of development, real attending schools, or one school where we saw that the story that they are repressing the Tibetan language is completely false. They are teaching Tibetan language together with actually English and Chinese, and the people feel that their lives are moving forward. But this attempt to try and romanticize serfdom is just part of a viewpoint that is only consistent with many of the aspects of what you might call the old European colonial world, which does not want to recognize that the world is changing and developments in Xinjiang are part of it.
It's so, for me, it's very sad. You know, you look at these people, I've been to these places, I've been to these film festivals, star-studded, you know, full of money, full of style, full of prestige. And yet, to me, there's a huge amount of ignorance and arrogance. That's why at the beginning I call it an artistic orgy of arrogance and ignorance, because they don't know the truth, they don't want to know the truth, and they just want to live in that comfort zone, you know, where they know what they're talking about, and they repeat what they have been told, and they continue to pass on to younger generations and people from elsewhere. And unfortunately, that's just so far from the reality. Zhoma, let me get to you. You are from the Tibet ethnic group as well. You're from Tibet Autonomous Region. How do you look at the disconnect between the reality and the Tibet that's been stubbornly held by some people in the know, influential people in the West?
Okay. First, thank you very much for having me here. And I want to say, old Xizang. I think there is a huge difference between the old Xizang and the modern Xizang. I think the old Xizang is like a very backward, and it's not good. It's not ideal society. Especially I think in terms of the education. I think in the old Xizang, in the past, I think the education is like a luxury for most people, and most people at that time were illiterate. And but right now everything different. Since we have the huge the support from the Chinese government, modern Xizang right now have a very very good education system. We have the preschool education, basic school education, and modern school education, training education, and so on.
May I ask, Zhoma, did you get your education in Tibet, in Xizang, and you learned English in Xizang?
Yes, I've been to the boarding school in Tibetan areas, and I learned the Tibetan language. Also, I learned the English, also the Mandarin. So I think this kind of courses taught me, you know, the not only the knowledge but also the plural view to see the world I think I benefit a lot from the model, the form of the schooling.
Let's get back to you in just a moment. David, I want to again get your perspective. Why do you think such films, such as the one clearly carrying a political message of demonizing China, even advocating separatism, Tibet independence, are being given such platforms? I mean, they talk about freedom of expression. What about those who are not represented from Tibet, like people like Noble, people like Droma? They have different voices, but they're not given the platform in Cannes.
Well, you used two words when you were speaking earlier. You talked about arrogance and ignorance, and that mirrors something that I often say. I describe the general Western attitude to China as a great big bag of arrogance, stuffed full of ignorance, and tied at the knot with a string of prejudice. There is only one narrative. It's a deliberate and conscious policy. It's not an accident that there are no alternative messages. The only films that are going to be shown are the films that reflect the Western narrative, and for the Western narrative now you can say the USA. Mr. Broer talked about the old European colonial mentality. But that European colonial mentality has now been replaced by an American neoconservative colonial mentality, but it comes down to the same thing. I've only looked, excuse me, I've only seen the short trailers for the two films. State of Statelessness was long on dramatic mood and mood music, and short on anything that looked like information. The film's going to be about Wisdom of Happiness. Looked like a standard self-development video by the Dalai Lama, but fundamentally, we're not going to be given the opportunity through formal media to present the Chinese case. And therefore, we need to find other channels. We have to find other channels. We have to make use of developing technology, developing communication. To be honest, China's doing a good job of that. It's not about the formal discourse. It's not about fighting battles where we're not even going to be allowed onto the battlefield. It's about finding different ways to get the message across. And I'm very insistent on the fact that we need to use things like Xiaohongshu, the old red note. We need to use social media to talk to audiences more directly.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know how long this piece is going to survive on social media such as YouTube, such as X. We will put it up there. Let's see whether it gets taken down simply because, you know, we're giving a different perspective, a Chinese perspective, and the true perspective, unfortunately, not miraged by, you know, some kind of montage. And yet, let's talk about one of the angles, one of the ways actually that have been employed by Tibet exile communities to talk about so-called their statelessness. You know, as David, you mentioned, you know, it's very long about the sadness, and they particularly pick these angles to, I don't know, I guess people fall for this kind of vulnerabilities. Mr. Brewer, how do you look at the selectiveness of these kind of angle? And you know, it's a course that they chose themselves. They decided to leave Tibet in the 1950s, 60s to go into exile. Tibet has developed so much better since that period of time, and yet they have stayed in that state of mind, that state ever since, and now they're lamenting about being so-called refugee. How do you look at their perspective?
Well, I think that what David was saying is the point that there is denial. They and as you pointed out, when you attend these film festivals, there's no interest in having even what I would call a Socratic dialogue. You may not always agree with another person, but if you're basing your ideas on human reason, which we should be, then you are open to at least hearing perspectives that don't always reinforce your own viewpoints. But I believe David is also right. I don't think the mainstream media will accept a genuine, realistic, or even more balanced view, because it simply does not cohere with their agenda. And it has nothing to do with whether it's the reality. But that problem, as I think he also mentioned, is a problem of, unfortunately, in many respects, Western, European, and American inability to recognize the developments that are emerging out of China, especially since the time of China opening up and becoming a global force and influence in development and in those areas which I work as the Belt and Road Initiative. It's the same problem. They do not want to have a accurate and objective, even balanced view of what this initiative represents.
Yeah. Well,
so I think we have to find, I'm very happy to be on your program, and I believe that it is a channel we should use to bring reality forward. But I think we have to look for other channels which will pass by this kind of censorship, which is unfortunately dominating the positions of
Mr. Brewer, whose loss is this going to be if the situation is not corrected?
Well, I mean, it depends in what context. I think it's in any time when reality is being distorted or completely blocked in almost all ways, we all lose. Because that's in my view, fundamental nature of human progress, is to be able to engage in dialogue for the advancement and progress of human civilization, which China is playing a great role in right now. And I was there to see these developments in Tibet. So I think that it's a great factor that you are having this program. I'm very happy to be on it and to help to get this viewpoint across. I am the Belt and Road chairman in Sweden, but I'm also an American citizen, a native-born American citizen born in the U.S., and I also see the same problem, if not even more seriously and more problematic.
David, let's get back to you a little bit. You were talking about Uncle Sam's wet dream for Tibet, because there is the CIA, which has played for decades a very important role to keep the exile movement alive. How do you look at the future prospect of this movement? Is it struggling? Because no way there's going to be some so-called free Tibet or Tibet independence movement. It's not succeeding. But what do you see going forward?
Okay, let me first of all point out that I've been to Tibet once for a couple of days. So I'm not an authority on Tibet, but I'm more of an authority on Tibet than 99.9% of the Free Tibet movement who've never been to Tibet at all. Secondly, you raised the issue of the CIA. I know a fair amount about the modern history of the Tibet, not from Chinese sources, but by a book by a man called John Kenneth Knauss. I wish I had it here to show you, but unfortunately I lent it to a friend. John Kenneth Knauss was a CIA operative for 40 years. He was in charge of what would now be described as SIPE in Tibet.
What's the name of the book?
It's called, oh yeah, I beg your pardon, it's called Orphans of the Cold War, by John Kenneth Knauss. I would recommend to anybody to get hold of that book, because it contains hundreds of pages, not written by a Chinese person, but written by an American, documenting exactly what the CIA got up to for 40 years in Tibet. And it's a real eye-opener. Now, yes, beg your pardon.
Are you recommending this book because he was exposing the dark history of CIA's Tibet-related operation, or was he touting it?
No, absolutely. This is a man who believed intimately in what he was doing all his life. He thought he was in the right. He talks about Tibetans all the time. It doesn't seem to occur to him that the Tibetans that he is talking about are a tiny minority. But he believed in what he was doing. So it's safe to assume that if he says in the 1950s or the 1960s, the CIA was doing X, Y, Z in Tibet, it's safe to assume that he's telling the truth. He believed in it. He thought he was right.
All right. The signal is not very good, but we got the name of the book, Orphans of the Cold War, you said, David?
Orphans of the Cold War, John
Okay.
Kenneth.
From
K-N-A.
Kenneth Knaus. Check it out. I'll recommend people to check it out. I'm certainly interested. Actually, there are a lot of accounts of the old Tibet by Westerners, even as they were forming the international image of Tibet. But Joma, let me get back to you. 3 minutes left. There has been remarkable progress as far as I understand. For instance, life expectancy have more than doubled in Tibet. The population also grew more than 3 times, from 1 million to 3.7 million, something like that, and the comparison between the pre-PRC time and up to now. Why is it in China's interest to keep Tibet stable, prosperous, and continuing to develop?
Oh, I think actually today I want to say I want to talk about the movies. I think I want to say the movie is just like it's a form of art, and it's including the fictional element, and I think it cannot represent the real Xizang. I think the real Xizang, the modern Xizang, is very affluent, and it's developed very well, and so I think if one really want to have an accurate perspective of the Xizang, I think people should visit the Xizang personally and to feel it personally, and to view it personally, and to have a correct and accurate perspective of the real Xizang. Because the real Xizang is very vivid and very advanced and very good.
I understand. I've been there, so I understand what you're talking about. Mr. Brewer, very quickly, you are trying to bridge the gap between what's happening in China and the understanding of China in the Western world. What has been successful? What has not been successful? Within 1 minute, can you?
Well, it's a lot of hard work. I did want to make this one point that Tibet is an extremely beautiful province, self-autonomous province in China. The environmental conditions are marvelous. The work for evolving water projects, the so-called roof of the world, all of the propaganda which states how the Chinese are exploiting or undermining this is also one way that they are manipulating people in the West to believe that this improvement of lifestyles is based on the exploitation of the environment. This is also completely false. The visit that I was able to make was enlightening.
We have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think we have to work for opening up people's eyes in many different areas.
Absolutely.
And
we have to leave it there.
I'm happy to join you in other programs where we can further the enlightenment. It's very important.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer, Chairman of Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, and many thanks to Solang Joma and David Ferguson. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got the point.